This week in CIST 1530, we'll look at Chapter 7. We'll look at topographical design. What we're currently seeing on the screen is our ending image, as we will look at using guides and adding design, creating a clipping mask, merging top with other layers. We'll also look at previewing fonts, formatting our text, creating text along the path, and also how to control top and positioning using advanced features. So we'll start by looking at our starting document as we continue from last week's document we created. So when you start this document, we'll also be using the match font and the circuit board as well. To start off, we're going to open up their file, and it will start with 07start.psd, and we're going to save this as the file name of 07 working psd.psd. The options we're going to look at is changing our workspace first. So if we come to the window and we see our workspace, we do have all kinds of different options here for Essentials, 3D, Graphics, and Web, which is the one we are going to choose for this lesson. So this will display our character and our paragraph in our pane over in this area. Now you can also add those by coming to Window. I'm going to switch back to my workspace as Essential. If I wanted to just use the panes of the characters, I can come to Window and then turn these on through this option, which will open up the character and paragraph tabs. So I'm going to change my workspace back to Graphic and Webs. Briefly, the last lesson we discussed clipping mask. That's where we create an object or group of objects that will use the shapes to mask other areas of our artwork. So in this lesson, we're going to use letters as a clipping mask, and we're going to allow the image and another layer to show through our clipping mask, as you'll see in the word digital here. We're also going to use guides. You'll see the guides in our ending document. The guides are used to precisely place images in your overall image. You also want to make sure that you have your rulers turned on. If you don't, you can come to Window, View, and then come down to Rulers. Okay, so this will cut your rulers on and off. This will also be where you'll turn your guides on and off. So I'm going to turn my extras off. I'm going to come down. I do have the options here to lock my guides, clear my guides. I can create a new guide. In this case, on this one, I'm going to cut my guides back on. On a document that doesn't have a guide, I would come in and click New Guide. And here I can choose a horizontal or vertical and the position of my guide. So I'm going to choose OK, and you'll see that I have a new guide. Now, this can be moved. I can create a new position for this guide to precisely place images on this, or precisely place other layers on this image. And I can turn on more new guides, position these. You can see I can also click on the ruler and drag, left click and drag, and I can create new guides in that way as well. Now if I create too many guides, I can always come in and choose the clear guides to remove those from my image. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a vertical guide from the left ruler. So I'm going to click this and I'm going to drag this to the center of the cover. Now you'll notice that my rulers are currently in pixels. So if I need to change this, I can right click on this and choose a different measurement type for my rulers. So now I'm in inches because the instructions want you to put this at 4 1/4 inches. And you'll see the measurements will appear on your screen. Now I'm ready to add top to my text, to my image. So to add point top, this is a single letter word line. It's point top, paragraph top. It's something we will do also in this lesson. So I'm going to select the background layer. I'm going to come to my horizontal top tool. And you'll see that I do have some different options underneath this. I have a horizontal top tool, a vertical top tool, a vertical top mask, and a horizontal top mask. In this case, I'm going to choose the horizontal top tool. In the option bar, this is where I can change the font. I have font options, the font size, some different attributes, the font alignment, the color of the font, some special effects, and this is where I can turn the character and paragraph panels on and off. So I want to make sure that I want to type my text in with a certain text, certain font, certain size. So before I click on the image, I'm going to make these settings. So the first setting is I'm going to choose a serif typeface. The example is the Minion Pro Regular from the font family pop-up menu. So I'm going to choose the Minion Pro. The attribute, in this case, is going to be Italian. Now you may or may not have some of these fonts installed on your computer. It's okay if you don't. For example, I don't have the Minion Pro Regular sign. I can also, instead of going through the list, I can type in the name of the font I am looking for. In this case, I'm going to choose the Minion Pro Italic. I'm going to change the font size to 144. Now you'll notice in the drop down menu it only goes to 72. And so I want to make sure I type in here 144. And I'm going to press enter to accept those changes. I'm also want to make sure that my text is center aligned. In the character panel, I'm going to change my tracking to 100% or to 100 points. And so this is going to be the space between my letters. That's what I'm setting currently. And now I'm going to click on my guide so that it'll place a new layer. And I'm going to type the word digital in all capital letters. You'll notice that you have a don't commit or a commit button that will appear on your option bar. I'm going to choose the commit button. Now you'll notice that it is out of place. It's okay. I can also select my move tool, make sure I have the digital layer selected, click on the text, and then I can reposition the text as needed. Now, if you decide that you need to edit this, you need to change it. Maybe you don't like the font settings. It could be something to where you misspelled the text. You can always click on the top tool. Make sure you have the digital layer selected and click somewhere in the text. Okay, you'll have your insertion point that will allow you to type in and add new text to this. If you're going to change the font size, you need to make sure that you select the text with the top tool selected. Then you're able to change the font size. Now, for the font itself, you can see how this will look by getting a live preview when you mouse over the different options. Okay, so I didn't really like the Minion Pro Italic. Okay, so I'm going to choose a different font. In this case, I'm going to choose the Berlin Sans FB Demi. I can also double click on the text and edit it that way as well. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to look at a different text. Be careful to make sure you click on the right part. If I accidentally clicked on the background, I may select it or the image here. So in this case, I'm going to choose the Myrid Pro Semi-Bold to change the font to this text. Once again, you can use your move tool to reposition your text to where you see it as appropriate. Now, to create a clipping mask, okay, this is where I'm going to pull this circuit board over. So I can click on the background layer and click and drag to the tab and then release. Okay, and that's it's added to my layer panel. And it's actually layer entered where I need it, above the digital and below the model. You can do this, or you can also go to your Windows Arrange and go to 2 up so you can see the two images side by side. I personally find it easier just to click and drag the image and place it to where I need it. If I need to resize this, I want to hold down Control and T with the layer 1 selected, the circuit board selected. I then am able to resize this, or I can go to Edit, Transform, and then Scale. So I want to try to resize this to about the same as the word digital. Now, when you resize an image, let me go back to this. Just clicking and dragging the corners is going to resize this in proportions. You'll see the height and width stays in proportions. If I want to drag and adjust the height independently of the width, or the width independently of the height, I want to make sure that I hold down my Alt key, my Control key, while I click and drag. And this will allow me to adjust the Alt and width independently. In this case, I'm just going to try to get this about the width of the word digital. And then I'm going to click the check mark to accept. Now, applying a clipping mask is a simple process. So the big thing is having your layer orders in correct order. So I'm going to right click the layer 1, and in here I am going to choose to create a clipping mask. If that is going to put that text, create a mask so that that image is now be able to see into my text, as you can see as we have here. Now, to add layer styles, I want to make sure I have the correct layer selected, double click the layer, and then I can add different layer styles to this image. I can also click the FX button in my layers panel located here. Both ways are going to get you to this layer style dialog box. So in this case, I'm going to set the blending options. In this case, I'm going to change this to multiply. I'm going to make sure my opacity is set to 48%. I'm going to add it, excuse me, we cancel that. You can also, as I show you here, you can choose different options through the FX. In this case, we're going to add an inner shadow. Okay, so here we're going to set the blending mode to multiply. We're going to set our opacity in this area to 48%. Distance is going to be 18 pixels. The choke set to 0, and finally the size set to 16. As we can see the difference with the preview cut on and off. We have the preview cut on, you'll be able to see how this is going to look on your image. So we'll click OK, and I've applied a layer style to my text. Next, I'm going to use a path to put my text along a path. So I'm going to choose the model layer. Now in Windows, I can come in and choose paths. So I'm going to show you my paths pane. In here, I've got some different options that I can choose for this. Blow this up just a little bit here. All right, for example, I can create a layer mask. I'm going to create a new path. and it will be named speech path. You see that I have this created. I'm going to come over and choose the horizontal top tool. Now it's very important that when you do this, you will see this top tool change. You see how the icon has changed. That's letting me know that I am going to type on that path. I need to make sure my settings are correct up here as well. In this case, I'm going to make sure I have it right aligned. I'm going to leave it as the MyWord Pro. I'm going to set it to regular. The font size is going to be 14 points. This, I'm going to set my tracking to -10. And I'm going to choose the all caps option. Okay, so this character pane, it does give you a lot more precise control over your text. So I'm going to move my top tool over the text. And when I click, you'll see that I have my text is now topped into the image. One thing I want to make sure is I click in the correct place. So I'm going to put this text closest to her mouth so it looks like it's coming out of it, and type in what's new with the game, new with games. Now you'll notice that my text is black. If I need to change this, I just need to select the text. I can come up to my color picker, choose a new color, set this, and now that my text is the correct white color. I can also choose this area here, and this will also open my color picker. So I've told you guys multiple times, Photoshop gives you multiple ways to complete the same task. You also can change your text. For example, this text right now is all on one layer, as we see here. I can modify this by selecting just part of the text and changing the font for this example. For example, if I just want to change this to bold, click OK. And so everything still has the same font. In this case, I just changed one of the attributes. But if I wanted to change the font for that, just the word games, I can. As you can see, the options. Let me get something drastic here. So if I need this in a different font, I can. So I'm going to accept the edits. Now, I've got this font, I've got this text exactly how I want it, but I want to make sure she's saying multiple things. And what we see in our ending document, she's saying what's new with games, new with phones, new with music. Okay, so instead of going through and creating this over and over, I'm going to right-click on the layer and come up to duplicate layer. This will bring up my duplicate layer dialog box. Now, when I do this, it's going to create this layer. It's going to be exactly where the other one is. So I won't be able to see it. It'll be on top of the other layer. So I'm going to click OK. Now when I click in here, I'm going to remove the word games and type in music. Now I'm going to move mine so we can see the difference. See, I do have a mistake here. that I can go back in and change very easily. And I've also left off question mark at the end. Okay, so I want to make sure that this is changed just a little bit, so it's not looking like it's just two sentences coming out of her face. So I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to use the free transform path. So it's going to let me change the path of this. In this case, I'm going to rotate this about -15 degrees. And I can also just type it in here as well. Actually, I'll take that back. This one I'm going to type in as 15 degrees. I'll accept the change. I may have to replace this, okay, as these are still on top of each other. Okay, I'm going to make another copy. And because I'm starting out with what's new with games as my basis for this, I'm going to use it to create another copy. Duplicate layer. And I'm going to change this one to phones. I'm going to accept this, and this one is one I'm going to transform to -15 degrees. Once again, I will need to replace this. Make sure you have the correct image grabbed. You'll see the purple lines that are appearing. It lets me know if I've got stuff lined up correctly. And we'll look at placing those precisely in a little bit. Now I can also warp my text. Remember we talked about briefly the option here for different effects. This allows me to create a warped layout text. If I'm going to just create a text, for example, I can create all kinds of different options for text. If I want my text to be a flag, I can do it that way. I can adjust settings. Now, none of this takes effect until I click OK. So we're just looking at a live preview of the What's New in Music. You can see the options I have for adjusting these. If I need it, different options. I'm going to hit cancel. And let me zoom in here so we can look at this a little bit better. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the What's New with Games. And when I right-click the layer, you also see I have the option to warp text here as well. Because this is going to take me to the same exact place that I was just in. So in this case, I'm going to choose the wave option. I'm going to leave this as horizontal. My blend option will be set to plus 33%. I'm going to put my distortion for my horizontal at -23%. And my vertical distortion at 5%. Okay, once I click OK, these options are committed. So the blend slider, that's going to specify how much of the warp is applied. Well, the horizontal and vertical distortion is going to change the perspective of our warp. And we're also going to do the same thing for steps 2, or for the words with music and with phones. Again, I'm going to click, right click, choose the warp text, going to go back to wave, set my blend options at plus 33, my horizontal negative 23, and my vertical at 5%. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the last one. Okay, so we up to this point, we've only worked with point text, point type. Now we're going to look at paragraphs up top. Now with this, we're going to start by using our guides for our, make sure our position is correct. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my move tool, and I'm going to drag another ruler, vertical ruler, and I'm going to put this to it's about a 1/4 inch from the edge of the document. So the document's 8.5. So we'll go to about 8.25. Close enough. We're also going to work with a horizontal ruler, and we're going to place this about 2 inches from the top of the document. Now you also notice that we do have a sticky note in our image. Sticky notes are a way you can add text. This is really something that's useful if you're working on an image with a group of people and you need to write notes to each other. So I'm going to double click the sticky note. Choose the layer. For some reason, this one is not opening. Let's look at our Windows, our Notes pane. There it goes. All right, so finally it opened. I'm not sure what was happening. Just wouldn't click on. So there we have our text. It's in our note. It says the trend issue, what's hot, must have apps, what's not, 3D movies at home, hard drives, wires, 3G. Okay, so we have our text here. So we'll make sure we just highlight the text, select it all, and hit Control-C to copy it. We'll come back to our layers, choose the model layer. We'll choose our horizontal top tool. Now, for this, we want to click our Shift key when we are inserting the new text. This is just to make sure that we don't accidentally select that digital layer, so that we only are going to use that we're creating a new top layer. Otherwise, because we're going to be really close to this, and Photoshop is sometimes kind of sensitive, and it will grab and layers that you're not wanting to change at that point in time. So we're going to click Shift, and we're going to click right where these intersect. What we're going to do is we'll hold down Shift, and we're going to drag a text box down and to the left, and then release the Shift key. So we're going to continue dragging until the box is about 4 inches wide and about 8 inches high. And the top is going to be aligned with these guides. We'll take a look at the ending document, as we'll see what we're going to have here. So I'm going to click in that area, and I'm going to drag down about 8 inches, as it goes crazy on me. Now, if something like this happens, you can always delete the layer. So we see that we've got our box is going to be put in proportion, which is fine. So we're going to release. We've got our text here. So I'm going to hit Control V. Now, don't worry, we're going to resize this and fit this in a minute. So we can now come to the arrows of the box, the text, and we can resize this. So we want this about 4 inches wide and about 8 inches high. And we release. That is going to be our text area for where we're going to work on this. Now in here, we're going to come into and select the first 3 lines. This time I'm going to make the changes over in my character panel. So I'm going to choose the Mired Pro, which is already selected. I'm going to choose the font style as regular. The font size is going to be 70. The leading, which is currently set to auto, I'm going to set this to 55 points. I'm going to set the tracking to 50 points. And I'm going to choose the color as white. Now, while I saw this selected, I want to make sure that I have right align selected. I can do that in the options bar. I can also do it in the paragraph group as well. In the paragraph group here as well. Now, the next part of the text that I'm going to select is just the word trend. In this one, I'm going to change this font style to bold. And I'm going to accept that change. So we look at how we've now added text and how we have made changes and edits to our text. All right, so the next thing is to select the rest of my text. Make sure I have everything selected. I'm going to choose Mired Pro. The style will be regular. Font size will be 22. Leading will be set to 28. The tracking will be set to 0. and I'm going to deselect the all caps. And I'm going to change the font color to white. Generally, when you're working on images, if you're using fonts over the top of the image like we are here, you want to make sure that the fonts contrast with what is happening in the background. For example, the text I have here, when I have this selected as black, it's very hard to read, right? Because I have a dark image behind dark text. So I want to make sure that I change that color. So if I have a dark background, I want light colored text. If I have a light background, I want dark colored text. Now, one way I could still use the black text in this situation is by adding a layer style. Now, because everything is on one layer, any layer style I add is going to be applied to everything on this layer. So generally, I recommend not using so much text on one layer. I would, if this was me designing this, the trend issue would be its own layer. The what's hot must-have apps would be its own layer, and everything else would be as well. But if I was to add a layer style to this text, I would probably going to be using the stroke, and I would change the color of the stroke to white. Now, adjusting the size of the stroke, you see I can still use a darker text, but I can still make it stand out from the white background or from the lighter background. In this case, though, I'm going to go ahead and change everything to white text. Now, I still want to make these here stand out, the titles for those sections. Right now, everything is the same font size, the same font attributes. So I'm going to choose the What's Hot. I'm going to make this bold. And I'm going to change the size of it just barely to 28. So now we can look and see that it does stand out more than the must-have apps. I'm also going to do this with What's Not. So I'm going to change the style to bold. And the font size to 28. Okay, so I want to make sure that the trend issue stands out. By selecting this, I can choose the color. In this case, I'm going to make it a greenish color. Now, if I want it to be the same color, for example, as you see, it's the digital, the green in the digital, I can use the eyedropper tool and select part of that green. Okay, so I can make it the exact same color as that green is there. Now, granted, there are different colors of green in the image we use for the clipping mask, but I can choose a selection. Now, you see our color picker tool also, we'll see that our hue, saturation, and brightness colors are RGBs, so we can also come in here and adjust those as needed as well. We also see the hexadecimal down here. And you can also choose one of these options, just clicking the colors. I'm going to click OK and commit the edits and look at our image as it is now. Not quite there. We're getting closer to the final image. Now, one of the options we have here we need to do is we need to create this area here where we have the volume number for the magazine cover. To do this, we're going to use a rounded rectangular tool. So I'm going to come down to my tools, I am going to add my rectangular tool. We'll look at some of these tools. We haven't really looked at these tools down in this area yet. One of these is our path selection tool. We do have our different selection tools here as well. We have a hand tool or a rotate view tool. Then we have our zoom tool that allows us to zoom in and out of the image. A pen tool, this allows us to draw different items with our pen, different paths, for example. We have different dodge, burn, and smudge tools that we'll look at how to adjust the image with those, and the blur, sharpen, and smudge tool as well. These are things that we will go over in later options. All right, so I'm going back to my rectangular round tool. I'll make sure that I have the shape selected. And you'll see that I do have different options up here. I can combine tools. I've got different path options. I can choose the fill is the color, stroke would be the selection around this. So I'm going to click and I'm going to drag for my tool. I had the black selected. So I can see the properties here. Okay, so down here, this is where I can make this more of a rectangular tool. So I'm looking at my shapes. In this case, I want to add 16 pixels. In here. This should be about 0.34 inches wide. So I can adjust that. I have adjusted the options here. Now you notice that everything has changed on it. I didn't really want that, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put these all back to 0. So that now only this corner here will be rounded. With this bounding box selected, I'm going to kind of drag this over a little bit so it's a little bit bigger with the L. And I'm going to take it up just a hair. I'm going to change the fill color in this option here. I'm going to make it more of a yellow-orange. So I'm going to choose the third swatch in the pastel. And I'm going to set the stroke to no color. And so if I decide I need to change this once again, I can, and I want to click off this so that the height and width are not dependent. When I choose the tool, I can then adjust this as needed. So I'm going to set my width back to 0.34. and then adjust this so it is in the correct placement, and we'll compare it to how we look on the ending document. All right, so now we need to add the vertical text, and that's simply just clicking on the vertical top tool. First, I need to click off that tool. Okay, so I'm now going to choose the vertical top tool. I'm going to click the Shift key and click near the bottom of this box. So now I've got my text in there. I'm going to type in volume 9. You see how it is typing in a vertical format. I can select this text. Once again, I'm going to leave it as Myrick Pro. I'm going to leave this as condensed as far as the volume style, the font style. Choose 15 points. Tracking is going to be set to 10. The color is going to be set to black. Now, if I need to reposition this, I can use this move tool as well to reposition the text within my rounded rectangle square. All right, so now I want to clean up some of this. I'm going to close the notes pane. And I do have a note down here that I want to remove. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my move tool is selected. Sorry, I got multiple layers selected here. Gotta find out which layer they put that on. All right, so right clicking in the right place, I can now come in to delete note. Tell it yes, remove that note. And from here, I can come up to view, and here I'm going to hide my guide. So I can choose extra, cut the guides off. Then I can see how my image looks and comparing it to the ending document. It's pretty close. Some of the things I may want to do is readjust the text in this situation, so I can readdress that. Now, once I'm finished, your assignment is telling you to flatten layers, which would go to layer and then flatten image. That's going to take all of your layers and put them into one final layer. If you do that, it's fine. If you don't do this step, it's also fine. And you can submit either the PSD file with the layers flattened, or you can leave the layers individual. Either way, it is absolutely fine.